And let's go ahead and memorize the most important Brodmann areas together. Okay, so I have created some stories for you guys to remember the numbers of the Brodmann areas, and let's go ahead and know them together. Story number 1, it's gonna be about the passionate anatomist. Well, that is my hero for today. It's me, okay, as a medical student or wherever kind of student, and she has a story, all right? So what is the story of that medical student that will help me to know the function of the Brodmann areas? Now, for that lady, we had a cute girl, medical student, like you guys, medical student, like you guys, and that student heard about how life will be very nice if you help others, all right, and she wanted to be a doctor one day, so she heard about medical school and the medical profession, and then she decided to go ahead and study medicine, all right, or anatomy in my case, all right? So, so areas 1, 2, 3 is gonna be all about sensation. At the beginning, you need to have a sensation. For every action, there is a reaction. Newton law 3, all right? So there should be something that happens first that makes you to feel so that you can react to that by a motor function. So area 1, 2, 3, you guys, area 1, 2, 3 is gonna be the primary sensory area, all right? So here you're gonna feel. And then area number 4 is gonna be your primary motor area. So you will take an action to apply for medical school. After that, you need to interpret what happened. Oh my God, I lost my mind. I entered medical school. I have to go ahead and study something else. It's very difficult, all right? So area 5 and 7 is the supplementary somatosensory area. Okay, so here you had the sensation, 1, 2, 3. Here you did an action. Here you interpreted the sensation, and here you are interpreting your action, which is the supplementary or the premotor area. This is here where you have the skilled movement. You understand and register the function that you already did before. Okay, guys, so this is how you will remember the Brodmann areas. 1, 2, 3, primary somatic area. 4, primary motor area. 5 and 7 is going to be your primary somatic area, and 6, the supplementary motor area for skilled movement. If you want to ask me how can I know it on the brain, well, you guys know that the central sulcus gives you frontal part and parietal part, all right? So in the parietal, we started with the sensation. So the primary sensation will come first, 1, 2, 3, and then this will be in the post-central gyrus. Remember S for sensation, and then the pre-central gyrus is your primary motor area. Okay, so motor pre. This is number 4, and then you will get back to the back. So 5 and 7 is going to be your association area or secondary sensory area, and then here you have the supplementary motor area. Okay, guys? All right, so what about area 8? Area 8, see guys how you will write number 8? It's just like that. It's for conjugate eye movement, all right? So area number 8 is for conjugate eye movement. It's the frontal eye field, all right, guys? So this is area number 8. All right, now here I made for you guys this to remember that the occipital loops for visual kind of processing and memory, and the temporal is for auditory. All right, this is number 1, okay, this thing. And another thing, remember when I told you we always give the first numbers for the primary sensation. For hearing, we have 17, 18, 19. 17 is that I can see. 18, 19 is I can interpret what I'm seeing. So 17 is the primary, 18, 19 is the secondary or the association area. What about the hearing? The hearing starts with number 40, but I have a nice story for that, so let's forget about that for now. What about area 9, 10, 11, 12? This is a story of, this is actually, it's not a story, okay? There is no story. It's only that after all your previous interactions, you need to take a decision and judgment. So you were a medical student, you had a feeling, you take an action, you interpreted your feeling, you registered your action, and then you saw it with your eyes, and then you started to have a personality. So number 9, 10, 11, 12 is going to be the prefrontal area These are the areas for judgments, all right, guys? For judgments, decision, your personality, your emotion. It's who you are. You are different than me. We are different than our colleagues. Everyone has his own experiences in life registered in those areas that will make him to take decision. It will make him to think. That's why you guys, when you find someone who is trying to think, he will kind of touch this kind of forehead, you're right, all right? So this is just to give you an impression that this is the area we kind of try to excitate and activate when we want to take a decision, when we want to have an idea, if we want to have our personality into something, judgment, all right, guys? So this is the prefrontal area. It's the down area of the frontal lobe, okay? Area 9, 10, 11, 12, all right? So we are moving in order. After these areas, we came to the visual cortex, 17, 18, 19. And now we will go ahead and see the story of the 40 years old man in a gathering with his friends. Diwaniyah, you guys, okay? So what will happen to that? This is a careless guy. He's just sitting and chatting, and he's not studying anatomy, okay? So we want to activate his kind of responsibility sensation, okay, guys? So he's 40 years old. So it's all about what happens to you when you're sitting in a gathering, all right? So what happens in your 40s, if your life is just going like that and you don't do anything other than sitting, first of all, you need to hear, all right? So first of all, you need to hear. First of all, you need to understand the spoken language, you guys. And the spoken language could be by hearing itself, and it can also be by the lips language, you guys. It can be also a written language. So actually, area 39 and area 40, we can add 22, Wernicke's area with them, is actually kind of, 39 is more into to read. Like kind of, if you guys read this, you can understand the written language without hearing phonation. So 39 is kind of, you are reading or reading a lips of someone who's trying to tell you something behind the window, okay, guys? So this is, first of all, if you are sitting in a gathering, you need to understand what's going around you so that you can interact, okay? So first of all, if it's a spoken language, okay, if it's, I mean, if it's something I can read by my eyes, 39, 40, it's gonna be like phonations and the language that I can hear, plus area 22. So here I can understand what's going on. Area 41, I can actually hear. So this is the primary area. And 42 is also secondary area, okay? So here, most of them are kind of association except for 41. All right, some people will tell you 41 and 2, all right, are primary auditory areas, okay? So, so first of all, you need to understand, and then even if you can see something written or by lips, and then you need to hear, actual hearing, and then you need to understand the spoken language. And then first you will take a sip of tea. So this is taste area, okay? But this is the story of the 40 years old guy, all right? And then you will talk, okay? So area 44 and 45 are, remember guys, the Broca's area. Remember, guys, we had it, the pars opercularis and triangularis, and that it was in the inferior frontal gyrus. All right, so this is the motor speech area. So this is the story that will help you guys to remember the numbers of the Brodmann areas related to hearing and talking. And also, if you guys can look at that, remember that here is kind of motor, here is kind of sensory, and remember that when you want to study the homunculus, because I told you guys that the leg area is medial, and laterally you have your upper parts of the body, and as you reach down, you will find that you're coming to the vocal area, the larynx, the pharynx, your mouth, your tongue, all right? So that's gonna be down here to talk, all right? And we're gonna see that as we proceed. So just remember and kind of link things together so that you don't have to memorize a lot of stuff. Okay, so this is kind of, I wanted just to make it even more simpler. Okay, so here it's kind of, some people would tell you that this is the primary area together. Some will tell you only number one, primary, and this is secondary. This is for you to understand the spoken language. It could be a written language. It could be sound itself, all right? and that is all in the temporal gyrus, the superior temporal gyrus. Okay, guys, and then the Broca's area is in the inferior frontal gyrus. And remember that area 44 and 5, opercularis and triangularis. And of course, you need to understand what's going on first so that you can interact. Now, what you have something called the global aphasia. If we have a kid that is born with congenital deafness, right? So he cannot hear anything. So how will he be able to talk and form sentences? He cannot, all right? So he's gonna have something called global. It means everything, all kinds of aphasia, right? So this is a clinical condition where we can find a problem in both areas, and that is because he was born without the ability to hear or understand anything, so that he cannot learn how to talk. Okay, so this is the global aphasia. Now we're coming to the prefrontal area, and let's see what happens if you have a problem in area 9, 10, 11, 12. We've seen that you had a sensation, you interacted, you interpreted the sensation, and then you registered the skilled movement, all right? And this is conjugate eye movement. And then coming to 9, 10, 11, 12, this is your personality. If you have a problem with that, that is kind of, we call him a docile person. He's submissive. He does not have any interactions. People are giving him orders. He's just following anyone. He doesn't interact. If a problem is happening, he's in a different world. All right, so there is no sense of responsibility. There is no sense of judgment. He lost his personality. He's lost his reactions, you know, okay? He cannot have ideas, you know, so kind of those emotions are disturbed. Okay, so this is if you have a problem in the prefrontal area. Now, guys, it's important that you know what happens in the occipital loop, and the starting from, guys, remember when we talked about the processing of the visual field all the way in the no, we didn't talk about that here. It's explained in the eye videos. So guys, anyway, it's very important that you know now what happens if you have a problem in the occipital loop, a visual area number 17, 18, 19. This is your visual cortex. But I'm not going to explain it now because it's already explained in Anatomy of the Eye Part 3 video of the same playlist. You guys go ahead and watch that video. And you can also watch it when you want to study the eye, because in that video I explained all the problems in the visual pathway as a whole story. And I would recommend that you guys listen to that when you want to study about the eye, so that you can understand the whole story, starting from any lesion here or there or here or there, okay? So that is all explained in that video. Now, coming to the last part of this video, which is the blood supply. You guys remember that we talked about the blood and the first video of the brainstem, and we said that we have two vertebral arteries, and these two vertebral arteries we give the pica, posterior inferior cerebellar in the inferior surface of the cerebellum, and then they will go ahead and unite and give the basilar on the top of bones. So the vertebral gave the pica, and the basilar was so jealous, so he gave the ica, and then he wasn't only jealous by giving only one branch, he also gave the superior cerebellar, so he took over the domination of the whole superior surface of the cerebellum, and then he ended by giving us the posterior cerebral artery. Okay, so now we are reaching the posterior cerebral artery. So the posterior cerebral artery is coming from what we call the vertebrobasilar system. Okay, so this is gonna give vertebrobasilar system, and we will stop at that point. All right, now we want to form a circle of blood supply to the brain, to the cerebrum. So we're gonna call this cerebral arteries. If my posterior is coming from vertebrobasilar system, the internal carotid in this case will be very jealous. He will tell, okay, so you took the posterior, I'm gonna take everything else. So you are posteriorly, but I will give anterior, and I will give the middle. All right, so the anterior cerebral artery is gonna be a branch of internal carotid. The middle cerebral artery is gonna be a branch of internal carotid, and he's gonna give a communicating branch to close off the circle with the basilar system, and we're gonna call that the PCOM, the posterior communicating artery. All right, so the internal carotid will give you anterior cerebral artery, okay? The anterior cerebral arteries, anteriorly, they're gonna give middle here, you guys, this is the internal carotid. It gives anterior cerebral arteries, it gives middle, all right, in the middle part, and then they give the communicating branches posterior to close off the circle. Other than that, there is a very important artery that comes out of the internal carotid and runs parallel to the posterior communicating. We call it anterior choroidal. Can you guys see this? This is parallel to this, and we call it anterior choroidal. This is very important, the anterior choroidal, because this is what gives you the choroid plexus, guys. The choroid plexus that you get to see it in the ventricular system, and it gives you the cerebrospinal fluid, okay? And it also gives blood supply to the deep structures of the brain. Okay, guys. Another thing I want to mention here is the oculomotor nerve, you guys. Can you guys see the oculomotor nerve? The oculomotor nerves actually arises between the two branches of the basilar. Basilar has superior cerebellar, it has posterior cerebral. You can find oculomotor here. If you have any arterial problem, aneurysm or something that compresses, you will have oculomotor nerve injury. Okay, guys, I'm not gonna talk about the oculomotor nerve. It's already explained in midbrain, and it's also explained in the eye videos part 1. Okay, so just remember that that might come in the exam. You have an aneurysm or a problem in superior cerebellar. Which of the following is correct? And you just need to go ahead and think about the oculomotor nerve. Okay, other than that, you know what do they supply. So if you have a blood supply problem, you know what will be affected, okay? So this is the circle of Willis. This is important stuff about that. Now, I just want to end up my talk talking about the deep structures of the brain. Okay, we have gray matter, a collection of nuclei deep in the basal part of the brain. Okay, deep structures of the brain, you guys. And we're gonna talk about that in a separate video, the basal nuclei and, you know, the thalamus and stuff like that. Okay, so what concerns me here that I want you guys to remember two things. I want to get back to this. I want you guys to know, let me get back to any brain area, okay? The middle cerebral artery, okay, it's middle, but it's not middle, okay? So the middle supplies the outer surface of the brain, okay? So if you guys look at the any brain, okay, guys, so the outer surface of the brain is supplied by middle, because middle comes out of here and it supplies outer surface. So if you have a problem with middle cerebral artery, think about anything other than your lower limbs and pelvis and leg area. And the anterior cerebral artery supplies the medial surface, and that will take me back to the idea of the paracentral lobule. All right, so if you have a problem with ACA, the anterior cerebral artery, anterior is actually medial, middle is actually lateral, okay? It's the opposite. So ACA, you will have a problem with the lower limbs, okay? So these are very important notes that you guys will have a lot of questions. If you know this concept, everything is gonna be easy. Now, I have another story also with the ACA and MCA, okay, the anterior cerebral arteries and the middle cerebral arteries. It's what? Actually, you guys, middle cerebral artery is the most important blood. Okay, it's the actually it gives everything outside. All right, and it gives a very important artery in the deep structures called lateral or lenticular striate. Lenticular striate, it supplies the lentiform nucleus in the basal ganglia, the striatum, and everything in the deep structures. Okay, so if I have a problem with the MCA, you have to think about basal nuclei problem. I'm not gonna talk about the basal nuclei problems now, okay, because this is a total different concept. Okay, I just want you to know that the blood supply of the deep structures of the brain are coming from the ACA and MCA. All right, the anterior cerebral artery and the middle cerebral artery. Middle cerebral artery gives most of the branches. However, very small amount is coming from the anterior cerebral. It's the medial striate. So we have lateral striate. Most of the branches to the deep structures, basal structure of the brain are coming from the lateral striate, which is from the middle cerebral artery. And little amount medially is coming from medial striate. And also don't forget the anterior choroidal. Remember the anterior choroidal? Don't forget this, because this also gives blood supply to those structures. What will happen if I have a problem in the basal nuclei? This is gonna be all explained as a whole concept in separate videos. All right, so this is just the homunculus, okay? So this is the motor and sensory homunculus, which means a little man. This is just kind of, I love this picture, although I think it's taken from a museum. I don't know what is this museum. I wish I can visit that. This is showing you guys that the somatotopic organization. It means what? It means you have, this means that your hands are getting a lot of neurons, a very huge area in your cortex. Why? Because you have a high skilled movement. You need to have a lot of axons to control, to write down, to draw, okay, so to do skills movement, to craft, okay, and motor. And in sensory also you need to feel the difference between stuff, okay? So if you have a problem with that area, you will have a problem called astereognosis. I will put a key in your hand, I will close your eyes and ask you, what do you have? You will tell me, I don't know. Okay, so this is the brain area, which is actually here in the lateral surface, okay, that is responsible for your hand, okay? So the homunculus is giving you two impressions. One of them, the amount of axons you have for each one of the parts of the body, which is a lot of them going to your hands, all right, and your face. That's why if I can put a needle, two needles, you can discriminate them. If I can put them at your back, you will not be able to identify them unless I give you a huge space between the two needles. Okay, this is giving me an impression that I don't have a lot of accent. It's not specific area. If I have a large area taking a huge amount of my cortex, it means it's a very accurate and specific area. Okay, guys? And like I said, this is your lower limb, but when it comes to sensation, you guys, you have more sensation of your feet, all right, and those areas, and very few sensation of your knee, for example. When it comes to motor, okay, you have more motor of your gluteal region and thigh and less into this. Okay, so this is not only giving us an impression about the place of the innervation of my body, it's also giving me an impression about the amount of innervation that is giving, that is more specific. Any place that needs more specification, like my facial expression needs to be specific, like my hand skilled movement needs to be specific, okay, my sensation in my face, my movement, sorry, this was the motor, so movements, vocalization, my larynx, okay, they will have larger areas, and even my hands. And for things like for your back, okay, you don't need to do anything with your back muscles other than you erect your back and you kind of move it, all right? It's not gonna make you to draw, for example, or write down, okay? So it's gonna be a small area, okay? So this is giving you an impression that your hand and face are getting more sensation and more motor innervation, and also that your hand and face are laterally. So if I have a problem here, this is gonna be with middle cerebral artery, remember? It's middle cerebral artery in the outer surface. And if I have a problem in the medial surface here, you guys, remember the paracentral lobule. Guys, remember the paracentral lobule. It's going to be, okay, so if it's motor or sensory, it's going to be in the ACA, the anterior cerebral artery, okay? This is going to be in the perineum, incontinence, and loss of sensation in lower limbs. Contralateral, of course, and we already talked about the upper motor neuron and the difference between upper and lower motor neuron. Here we are in the big boss. We are forming the corticospinal and corticonuclear fibers. Corticospinal, they are going all the way to the spinal cord to move my body. Corticonuclear for my head, okay, corticonuclear, okay, head and neck, cranial nerve nuclei, okay. So anything coming from my cortices, all right, corticospinal, corticonuclear, this is upper motor neuron. So if you have a problem with blood supply, all right, so you have to think about upper motor neuron lesion, like we said previously. Okay, guys, so with that, we are reaching the end of this video. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, guys, for watching, and see you in the next videos.